How we doing, guys? It is Mr. Striz, and I'm checking in. Today's LEQ is distinguished between renewable and non-renewable resources. So we're going to be looking at these two things, and we're also going to be looking at biodiversity. Now, I know we talked about biodiversity these past 2 days, but we're going to do kind of just a real refresher on it. So when we talk about biodiversity is the amount of organisms in all of Earth's biosphere. So that's every single organism from any type of plant, the producers, or from herbivores to carnivores to the top ape predators like us and sharks and Sasquatch and the scapegoat ape or whatever that thing is. It's supposed to be in the Everglades. But once again, that biodiversity includes all the amount of organism in Earth's biosphere. And we talked about recently how Earth's biosphere is actually decreasing, mainly because of us. But we're going to look at a couple other things today as well, why biodiversity is actually in trouble. And the first thing we're going to be looking at is invasive species. Now, I'm sure you guys have probably seen at least one of these types of invasive species that we have seen in Florida. Probably most likely that Burmese python there in the top left-hand corner. And what invasive species are? They are species that are non-native to an ecosystem and most likely causing harm to it. So we know about those Burmese pythons and how they're causing harm to the Everglades because they feed on other animals that should be ate by something else. We talked about food webs and why there's, certain organisms are ate by other organisms. Well, this is what happens when a new organism is introduced that's not supposed to be there. There's really no predator to Burmese pythons. Other than humans during hunting season. So that causes an issue because nothing's really hunting them, but they're hunting everything else. So now there's less food for other things in the Everglades to eat. So it increases competition, which is not a good thing because these Burmese pythons are the ones that are surviving. Now, looking at that cool looking fish in the top right hand corner, that's another invasive species that has been seen in Florida. That is actually called a lionfish. It's super cool, but it can be super dangerous as well. They're mostly from South Pacific and the Indian Ocean, but they came over here from trade. And people wanted them in aquariums, and people ended up letting them loose, and that's basically how invasive species can occur. And what they do is they feed on many different types of fish. There's about 50 different prey that they have, but once again, that's ruining an ecosystem because it's eating on organisms it's not supposed to eat there. And if you notice little spines back here, those little spines actually have venom in them, and they cause a poisonous sting. It mostly lasts for a couple of days, but it has caused paralysis as well in people. And that last one, that funky looking one in that bottom right hand corner, kind of looks like a slug maybe a little bit. It's actually a walking catfish. Once again, that walking catfish is from South Asia, but it was the same thing with the lionfish where they came in for trade for aquariums and people let them go. And the same thing with the walking catfish is it's just eating other organisms that's not supposed to eat because it's introduced into an ecosystem that's not supposed to be there. So that's a big issue with invasive species and how they're causing harm to the environment there. Now moving on, we're going to be looking at renewable and non-renewable resources. So if you've seen in this picture here, you probably talked about it in middle school at least once, hopefully, when you're paying attention. But renewable resources, all renewable resources are just resources that are constantly replenished. Take a look at those examples there, solar energy, water, and wind. Those are all resources that constantly are being replenished throughout Earth. Solar energy, we got the sun. Water, we got the water cycle. Wind, we got wind energy. So those are renewable resources that are constantly being replenished. Now, on the other hand, though, we have non-renewable resources. Those are resources that cannot be replaced by natural means. So non-renewable resources, once they run out, they're out. And, that's why it's a big issue by us using these non-renewable resources because what happens when they run out? How are we going to fix that issue? And just a couple examples, like we see there, solar energy, water, wind for renewable resources. And also in that picture, phosphate, oil, and limestone. We got natural gas is another one. That's examples of non-renewable resources. So those are big issues that humans will eventually have to answer to, hopefully sooner than later. before that cause even bigger issues, that can impact Earth and the survival of Earth itself. But that wraps up our video for today. Make sure you answer that LEQ in your summary, and then go into the left-hand page and do that T-chart on renewable and non-renewable resources. This is Mr. Driz signing out.